Now, for the report, okay, I suggested in my hint very strongly that what you're going to want to do is, oh, up here, right? Make sure that all function types are listed in the report, even if there are no functions for them, right? At first thought, you might think, well, wait a second. The function type is a required foreign key, unlike meal type, which can be nullable. So why do we need an outer join? Well, because there might be functions that aren't, uh, or there might be types that have never had a function of that type entered in the system yet. So that's why we need an outer join. So how do we create this view? I'm just going to take a few minutes. I'm not going to do it for you, but I'll give you some hints along the way. And I think it's worthwhile exercise. So let me just bring up my Visual Studio again, and just going to close that out. Actually, I'll close everything here. Okay. All right. So we know that we need to be able to create a view. So how are we actually going to work with our database and get that done? Well, there's a couple of tools we've looked at. One, of course, is this one, right? Is there anybody that does not have this tool installed at home that was unable to get it installed and working at home? See, fortunately, in a sense, most of us are working from home much of the time. I know it's a pain in the rear end that when you're on the lab systems at the college that uh, we didn't get this installed in time on the image. So you don't have this tool there, and unfortunately, it won't let you install it for some reason, right, as a Visual Studio extension. Unless that's changed, has anyone been able to install it? Yeah, in the lab? Okay, no one's saying anything, so I'll assume no. Okay. All right. But if you have it at home, then you can just use it to help create your view, right? Now, of course, I already have it here because it's in my code to create it every time. But let me just show you how you go about doing that. Okay. Yeah, I was told earlier there was a problem doing it in the lab, right? So I'm going to share an alternate thing you can do. So I can just right click on the database and say new query, right? And here is our familiar looking query design window, just like we have in SQL, right? In using SQL Server Management Studio, for example. So here is where I can actually go in and start writing my query itself, right? So for example, I know that I've got my tables. I can expand this and see the tables. Yep. So I need function type, right? And I need to relate that to the actual functions, right? Because I want to group it by function type and show data, summary data based on all the functions in that type. So you can just start typing here. Select. I'll just put star from, right? So function types. Now, here's where we have the advantage that we can do outer joins. Do you remember the difference between a left join and a right join? Kind of a tongue-in-cheek question because there really is no difference. Well, the difference is which table you're referring to, the one on the left or the one on the right. That's all it is. If I swap the two, right? So I'll give it an alias of T for function type. Uh, and then I'm going to say left join functions F, right? Now, of course, we always have to say on. We have to define what the relationship is based on. So of course, it's going to be in my function type. The primary key, ID, has to match the function, the foreign key for the function type, which is our function type ID, right? So my point about left versus right, because this is the one I mentioned on the left of the word join, and this is the one mentioned on the right. Oh, I better fix that typo, right? That's the only reason why I use the word left. If I swap these around, if I said functions, okay, join function type, then I would make it a right outer join, right? That's the only thing about left and right. It's just referring to the actual order that they're mentioned here in the join clause, okay? So I should be able to try this out. Let me just click run. Okay, I have an error. All right, no such column, function type ID. Oh, see, FUNCTION. Okay, let's try that again. There we go. So there, I've got 84 rows of data. Okay, so it's basically based on that join, and I'm seeing everything here, right? Okay. Now, if this was just an inner join, would it be different? Let's try that. No, I have the same number of rows. Oh, okay. I guess I guess in my data I don't have any function types defined that don't have a function. I think I do up in my live version that's running. Anyway, I know it's a left join, right? But the point is I'm just showing you how you can use a tool like this. So once you get your select statement giving you exactly what you want, right? Then you can actually go in and start converting it into a view by simply saying create view and giving it a name, right? So if I do a group by, and of course, these are the two things to group by are the two pieces of information that I'm going to include in the output, okay? Now there, see, I'm just seeing them grouped by that, and that's all I'm projecting, okay? So no surprise that I just see. Now, if I do that without the group by clause, no, I don't know if it's actually ignoring it. Let me take it out. Yeah, okay. Hmm. All right, but anyway, you get to play around, add whatever you want, right? Just one thing I'll mention, if you look at the example we did before, one of the things with SQLite, we have to handle the situation that we might get a null value back, especially using an outer join. So make sure you use the if null, right? So if I wanted to include something like a count of the number of IDs, okay, uh, of the functions themselves, right? Then I would make sure I used if null, and then whatever I put first in the bracket is the expression that might be null, then I can supply the value I want to substitute if it is null, right? So in that case, it might be something like count. I'm just going to count how many functions there were. Counting the primary key always works. Something like that, right? So I can try running that. And there we go. So now I'm seeing the column total number, how many functions in total I have in each one. So that gives you a start. I'm not don't want to do the whole query. The last thing I'll maybe mention is, remember you are working with the database table, right? So if you're going to use, something like, well, you're asked to use the estimated value. Well, remember, we made a nice summary property in the model class that does that calculation for you because there's, a few things to it. There's a SOCAN charge, base charges, then you have your per person charges, multiplied by your guaranteed number and so on, right? Well, so it gives us in our model class a nice simple summary property, I think called estimated value. Trouble is, we don't have that here in the database. So yeah, anytime you need to calculate that, you have to use the whole equation for the whole thing, right? That's the last kind of hint I'll give you. Okay, but anyway, when I'm done, then I just, wrap the whole thing basically up top, say create view, such and such, whatever I want. And then that will give me my code that I know I need to then use to generate the actual view inside the database, whether you're going to do that in extra migration steps or add it into your the initializer, right? Remember when I say that I'm referring to in data here, this is our CM initializer, right? Okay, oops. Yeah, I don't want to show off all my SQL because I have it in there. Okay, now I did say one more thing. I said, if for some reason you can't get this tool, let me just point out that back here in Blackboard, uh, oh, I think it's right. Where did I throw it? Tips and tricks, I think. Oh, okay, yeah. Here, when I talked about SQL concatenate, right, I added the links back in here. They were in another spot, but I thought I might as well put them right here with everything else about working with SQLite. So remember, I did mention this the other day that this was up here, that, things like if you want to do concatenation, right, use the two pipe characters with SQLite. There's no concat function like we have in SQL. You can't use the plus sign and so on and so forth. So I've got a few different things that are tips on how to work with querying in SQLite. But also I mentioned, of course, here's the extension. If you can install it, that's great. If you can't, there's this one, the SQLite browser. It's an alternate. It's free, open source. You can download it, install it. And I do believe that this one you can actually install in the lab. So if you can't get the other one, you can try this one. Now, how does it work? Okay, well, let me just show you. Okay, it opens up as this little application. I can select Open Database. And if I browse here, come to my work folder, catering, go into the solution, find the actual database, and there we go. So I can open it up. You get all the schema information about everything that's in there already. Look, you can even go browse data. I can select uh, a table, see all the data in it and so on. But also there's SQL. So here is where I could put in my SQL, right? And it's actually kind of nice because this one, unlike the other tool, actually will help you with some IntelliSense. It'll help you, find, uh, right, takes a little, sometimes it takes it a bit to come up, but it'll actually help you with completing names. And when you go dot, it'll actually, help you sometimes. So you get a bit more IntelliSense built into this tool, but it's the same thing. You can use it, connect to your database, help you create your SQL to define the view you want to create, right? You can actually execute it, create the view in the database because you are actually connected to the database. But remember, we tend to drop and recreate our database all the time. So that isn't the ultimate solution, just getting it there. You want to get the code so that you can actually put it into your Visual Studio, right? And actually add it in as you either do your extra migration steps or your in your initializer. Okay, just executing the raw SQL that way. All right. So that's basically what I was going to cover today, is just giving you these tips and tricks and hints. Again, skip all the bonus work until you want to come back and have time to do it. But, hopefully I've given you a few things that'll help you be successful in getting it done by the due date next week. Any questions? All right.